Am I recording? I am. And here's what I do every time. I say, "Oh, let me share my screen," and it takes forever. And I click around. You hear the clicking like a madman in the background. But let me share my screen. Here we go. Look at this. This is it. This is the last flipping chapter. Who thought that we'd ever get here? As the last chapter is gonna be about. It's called preserving your estate. It's about wills and trust and all those kind of good things. So let's get into it. This should be pretty short, actually. They say one of the major goals of an estate planning is to minimize the amount of transfer taxes that your estate must pay. And we'll get into some of those rates here a little bit longer or a little bit later. One of the big things, here's what I want you to know. I'm going to kind of leading with this. For the exam, question is going to be the difference between the benefits between a will versus a trust. Okay. What is better? A trust is better than a will. Why? Because it's accurate and it's fast. And we'll get into that later. Accuracy and speed. When you have a trust, it's just, they're both documents, but the trust can be done by somebody else that is seen legally as a more accurate document, and that is done basically if you die within days, you can have that thing settled. Wills can take, best case scenario, 6 months in court, sometimes 2 years. You go to probate court, and it can be as accurate as possible. You can't have people fighting over the death benefits and stuff. Actually, it's a really funny story. I was talking to one of our instructors here, who's an expert in estate tax and death taxes and everything, and he comes from an accounting background, and he basically said he went into the reading of a will one time, and which is always bad. And before it started, one of them said, "Before we go forward, I just want to let everybody to know that my sister over here, so 2 sisters, tried to kill me in a past life." And he says, when that happened, he said, "I knew I hit the jackpot." You know why? Because you have this thing called billable hours. That means they're going to be fighting forever about who gets what. Another one, he said, there's a situation. He says, when these things happen and people fight, he says, you're going to make a lot of money because people, they're going to be fighting forever, and you're just going to be just working behind the scenes and working as a lawyer, as an accountant. He says another situation where these two, a brother and sister, got in a fight at the reading of the will because the sister said, "Dad used to pump your gas for you for free. I had a job and I had to pay for it," and never let that go for 40 years. So the family dynamics are always crazy, but even they're getting worse once people die. So let's get into this. So estate planning, that's basically the process of developing a plan to administer and distribute your assets in a manner consistent with your wishes and it should be and the needs, not and the needs, and the needs of your survivors while minimizing taxes. And we'll get into the tax implications a little bit here. Actually, get into them right now. You can basically give a gift tax of $15,000 per year, tax-free, to as at least the person giving that gift per year to people in your family, like your kids. So sometimes it's like around Christmas, it's very common for people just to give away cash because they can give that away and it's tax free. Upon death, you can a single person can give away up to $11.18 million with no taxes taken out for the person who's going to receive it, and or 22.36, which is double that, for a couple, tax free. Anything over that is 40, you get taxed 40%. So keep that in mind. 3 types of taxes to be concerned when preserving your estate: the transfer taxes or the gift tax, which is at $15,000. Anything over $15,000, like on an annual basis, you get taxed. Under $15,000, you will not. The transfer taxes on your estate, the estate tax, which is that $11.18 million number I told you about, or the 22.36 for a couple. Anything below that is tax-free. Anything over that, you get taxed at 40%. And then you just have to know what those income taxes will be on your beneficiaries, the people who you're giving that money to. So once you get over that threshold, that's when the taxes kick in. Before that, you're fine. Two important areas of planning for preserving your estate: the people planning and the asset planning. People might be thinking it's all about assets. It's all about assets. No, it's not always. Sometimes it's about people too. Imagine if somebody passes and they have minor children, or they have adult children, but one of them has special needs. Those are special cases that you have to take into consideration. Probate estate. That's basically the real and personal property owned by a person that can be transferred at will by death. Once again, the real estate type stuff and personal property, personal belongings, or cash assets owned by a person that can be transferred at death by will. When it comes to wills, little thing to keep in mind, it's better to have your will handwritten, believe it or not, than typed, because a handwritten will, you can basically tell if that person actually wrote it. A typed will somebody can just type it up and then just have somebody on their deathbed kind of sign away. So a handwritten will is better than a typed will. Gross estate basically is all property owned by the decedent that might be subject to federal estate taxes upon the person's death. So basically, look at all of their assets, and that's basically the gross estate. That could be real estate, that could be property, that could be any liquid assets, that could be any personal property. It's the whole big kit and caboodle of the gross estate. The will, that's basically a written and legal enforceable document expressing how a person's property should be distributed upon his or her death. Let's say there's a will or there's no will, and somebody passes, you can go to both situations. You would have to go to probate court, and if it's a situation where you have, a couple, no kids, easy. Couple, one kid, easy. Couple kids, easy. Once you get divorces, once you get stepkids, once you get all this kind of stuff, that's when it gets trouble. That's when it gets tricky. And nothing, especially nowadays, is not as cut and dry as it appears to be. I always mispronounce it. Intestacy. That's basically the situation that exists when a person dies without a valid will. Still have to go to probate court for that. And probate court is kind of a nasty word. Best case scenario, like I said, after that person passes away, it's you can get those assets in 6 months. Most likely, it's going to be about 2 years. If you have a trust, it's pretty much immediate and it's accurate. It's exactly like the living person wanted it to be. Codicil, it's basically a document that can modify a will without revoking it. Just a simple modification in that will is a codicil. Testator, it's the person who makes the will that provides for the distribution or dispensation of the property at his or her death. So that's a person that just writes the will. These are kind of like quiz type questions. You don't need to know this kind of stuff. The big takeaways for this chapter are that the trust much better than a will. Because of why? Because of speed and because of accuracy. Last instructions. Basically an informal memorandum that is separate from a will and contains suggestions or recommendations for carrying out the person who died wishes, the decedent's wishes. Just last instructions. The probate process, like I said, this is where it can be a problem. It's the court supervised dispensation or distribution of a dead person's estate. The executor, that's the person, the legal representative of an estate designated in the will. That's basically the person in charge of that will. The administrator is the personal representative of the state appointed by the court if the person who dies without a will. Okay. What did I say? Oh, here we go. Durable power of attorneys for financial matters. That's just basically a legal document. You're handing over to somebody the authority to make legal and financial decisions. So it's like the definitions. It's a legal document authorizing the person to take over someone's financial affairs on and act on his or her benefit. You usually see something like that happen. Durable power of attorneys when somebody is indisposed, as you would say. Somebody's like, in a state of like a comatose state, that those kind of things happen. So that living will basically is a document that states the treatment a person wants if he or she becomes terminally ill. And it can be binding, but it's not as good as a trust, because a trust is, once again, immediate and accurate. Joint ownership, joint tenancy, and is just a number of people who don't have to be related to be involved in the ownership of a will or somebody's estate. The tenancy by the entirety of property automatically passes to a spouse if there is not somebody, if there are not other related people involved. Trust, we talked about trust. I've talked about it quite a bit here. It's just a legal relationship created when one party transfers property to a second party for the benefit of the third party. So one person transfers property, that's me, I'm alive, I transferred to a trust for my beneficiaries via a third person, that third party to get it. So basically it's like your assets being transferred or basically held in a sense and managed to be distributed to somebody else. A few more definitions here. The grantor is just a person who creates a trust and whose property is transferred into it. The trustee, usually sometimes there's problems with the trustee, is an organization or individual selected by the grantor to manage trusts for benefit of beneficiaries. And the beneficiaries, you guys know what beneficiaries are. You know why you know beneficiaries? Because you've watched Dateline. This is the people who receive benefits from the trust, people who receive the money when somebody died. Usually watching a Dateline episode, they always go for the spouse because they find there's some life insurance policy. And they say that person's the beneficiary of the life insurance policy. The living trust, it's basically a trust, created and funded during the person's lifetime. So that's when somebody, while you're living, you make a trust. You make that document while they're alive, while that person's alive, to figure out where that estate's going to go. The revocable living trust is a trust in which the grantor, or the person who is writing, or the person who owns the assets, reserves the right to revoke the trust and regain trust property. The grantor can serve as the initial trustee. So that's kind of if you want to make changes along the way, or right before end of term. Irrevocable living trust. This is all kind of it's you don't need to know. I mean, those would be like in a quiz, but these are just more kind of definition type stuff. You won't remember all these kind of things later. But like I said, the big thing is trust is so much better than will. Why? I said it probably for the 10th time. Speed and accuracy. Speed and accuracy. That's it. Trust better because of speed and accuracy. You can read this last definition if you want. I'll read it. A trust in which the grantor gives up the right to revoke or terminate the trust. That's it. I mean, this is a pretty boring chapter, to be honest with you, but there's some good stuff in there. But once again, trust much better than will for speed because of speed and accuracy. That's about it. I'm gonna put a couple more videos up. Just some of them nothing related to this class, but I think it's important for you to know. And I think that's about it, guys. It's been fun. It's been real. It's been fun. Unfortunately, it hasn't been real fun because we haven't been in person. But I got to talk to a few of you in office hours and stuff. So hopefully, if I see you on campus one day, you see this goofy guy like me walking by you, you can give me a hey, what's up kind of a thing, or give me a high five if we can do that at any point in the future, and touch hands. Aside from that, it's been great. For the last time, I got to tell you something. Scram.